Hi everyone, this is Pennsylvania attorney Evan Gutman here with video number 8 of my legal education series pertaining to the licensing of attorneys in this nation, focusing in large part on the good moral character requirement for admission and obtaining a law license. The presentations are based upon my book, State Bar Admissions and the Bootlegger's Son. The full book may be obtained on both of my websites, which are heavensadmissions.com and gutmanvaluations.com. Those websites also contain a supplement to the book that I wrote a few years later, as well as a fictional novel I wrote titled Heaven's Admissions Process. So let's now proceed with video number 8. Today I want to talk about the importance of the rule of law. There is, in fact, nothing more essential to the functioning in a peaceful manner of society than the rule of law itself. Few people would verbally disagree with that. If there's no rule of law, people do what they please. That inevitably results in rule of the strong over the weak. And that is not what our nation is supposed to be about. As a matter of fact, the judiciary would agree with what I just said. Even though I have differences of opinion regarding many matters with the judiciary, they would agree that the rule of law is critically important and that the rules should be applied fairly. The place, however, where we depart from each other is that the judiciary and state bars, unlike citizens, tend to claim exemptions for themselves with respect to application of the law and the rules. And they do so by a manipulation of logic and a manipulation of interpretation of words to claim exemptions for themselves from constitutional principles of law. When rules are broken, historically, throughout the world, when rules are broken, the tendency has been for the rules to be broken in favor of the strong. The rules are designed to equalize the playing field, but that's not what always happens. Sometimes the rules themselves become the exact mechanism to rig the playing field. There's what's known as a dichotomy between procedure and substance. And the dichotomy between procedure and substance is related to the equivalent dichotomy between liberal application of rules and strict application of rules. For instance, let's say there's a particular court rule that says a document must be filed within 10 days. The rule to file the document within 10 days is designed to foster a standard, and that standard is notice. Basically, by filing the document within 10 days, the other side is given reasonable notice of what's going to be in the document. So rules are designed basically to promote standards. But sometimes, if the rule is applied, it results in an unjust result. What happens is procedure takes precedence over substance when the rule is applied, even though it may result in an unjust result, even though it may have an unjust result. However, substance takes precedence over procedure when the rule is not applied because it would have an unjust result. Now that kind of makes sense somewhat. In other words, apply the rule when it's just to apply it, and don't apply the rule if it's unjust to apply it. Sounds on the face somewhat reasonable, but there's a problem with that. There's a real problem with that. If you only apply the rule when it has a just result and you don't apply the rule when it has an unjust result, the problem is it's no longer a rule. It's essentially a conditional rule. And it applies sometimes and it doesn't apply other times. So if you look at the court rules, they're quite voluminous, contain a multiplicity of requirements, some of which are unreasonable, but they have a multiplicity of requirements. What most people are not aware of is that virtually all states within their court rules or their court opinion holdings, they have a separate and distinct rule that says the rules are to be liberally applied in the interest of justice. That's critical. That's critical. They have a separate rule that says that all the rules are to be liberally applied in the interest of justice. So effectively, what it basically means is that the judge can ignore any particular rule at any given point in time if he feels it has an unjust result. I tend to feel that if you got a rule, it pretty much should be applied. That's not what occurs, though. Basically, attorneys regularly say, yeah, Your Honor, we didn't do what the rule said, but in the interest of justice, please allow our late filed document to be accepted. The judge is then in a position, he says, well, I kind of like this attorney. Okay, yes, the rule's not going to be applied, and I'm going to accept your pleading. On the other hand, if he has an attorney in front of him who he doesn't like, or a pro se litigant, quite often, he says, well, you didn't follow the rule. Therefore, your document's rejected. And that's the problem. The rules designed to equal the playing field have become the precise, exact implement to rig the playing field. And this occurs because of the discretion the judges have, as well as this other rule that pretty much all states have, either expressly stated in the rules themselves or in a court opinion, which says that the rules are to be liberally applied in the interest of justice, which basically means whatever rule is broken can be ignored. Good luck to citizens if you try to adopt that perspective with respect to any law that you may violate. The only other thing I would add is that when you have a situation like that, so that the judges are looking at procedure versus substance in order to determine liberal application versus strict application of the rules, it promotes the detestable principle of the rule of the strong over the weak, the rule of the rich over the poor, and certainly the state bars and the judiciary, particularly in the licensing process of attorneys. They apply the rules very, very liberally to themselves and other people and applicants they like, and they apply them hyper strictly to any applicant seeking a law license whose attitude, whose demeanor, whose emotions, opinions they may not approve of. That's wrong, and it promotes the rule of the strong over the weak and jeopardizes the legitimacy of the legal profession itself. Hope you enjoyed today's video, found it somewhat interesting, and we'll see you in the next day or two or few. And remember, love right, don't fight.